Welcome to this Bimfire webinar. We are going to go through all the news in the latest release of the Bimfire. And first of all, thank you guys for joining us. Today we got the whole webinar in English because we have participants in all over the Nordic and also Europe. So we have people I saw from Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, Germany, UK, and also a few more European countries. So very welcome. Just a short follow-up on what Bimfire is. Bimfire is a Revit plugin that makes it possible for you guys to, the fire engineer, to take control of the fire safety information and integrate it directly into the BIM process. In a minute, I will hand over to my colleague, Nicholas Stranefors, who will give you a guide through some of the news. And in the end of this demo, there will be opportunity to ask some questions in the chat. So please write your questions down and we will read up everything and answer them in the end of this. So Nicholas, take it away.
Thank you. Can it work? Perfect. I will share my screen over here. You should be able to see my screen right now. Perfect. We're not going to go through all the changes. There are way too many. I will show you 5 or 6 that I think is worth mentioning when we are working here. First and foremost, welcome, of course, again. The major changes that we had with Bimfire tools was actually a lot behind the scenes, where we changed the entire licensing system, which most of you, of course, that has Bimfire tools already, notice that you have to reinstall with the new licensing system using Navigate's system instead of our old one. The first thing I'm going to talk about is opening requirements that most of you have noticed. It's kind of upfront here. And here you have the possibility to add up to 6 requirements, opening requirements on your Bimfire tools and the buttons there. And these are totally customizable. Instead of having the drop-down, which we had before with a lot of preset values, now we have the opportunity to go to opening settings. And here we can write any kind of requirements that we want, whether it's EI to 60 CSA, or we could do fire door 60S, for instance. So you can define any kind of requirements that you want, and we can save it. And once it's saved, the button here updates, of course, and you have the opportunity or the possibility to basically connect this to a keyboard shortcut. If I go to a floor plan and place these requirements, of course, it's going to work the same way as before, where it places the compartmentation, write the value on that value. Another large feature that, once again, a lot of you will probably never notice, but we made Bimfire tools being able to work with any kind of Revit language, meaning if you're not using the English one or using the German one or Spanish or French or Italian, it works perfectly fine right now with all the features as well. There is no hold up from there. As you can see here, except from having these we have these buttons, we have done a lot of things behind the scenes within Revit itself. For the UK versions, we added all the SIPSI symbols that you want to use, so you can use those as well. They have within their name, they're called fire_SIPSI, so you can find those and use those in your modeling. And what we also have done is we actually added a thumbnail on each symbol that that we have, whether it's a compartmentation wall requirement or any kind of symbols, which means that we actually don't have to use create legend anymore. In our template that are included, of course, if we open a sheet, as you can see here, we actually place something called a schedule on this sheet, meaning if we drag and drop this view, it will automatically understand what is on this view, and it will show us the thumbnail of that symbol and even the language, meaning we don't have to worry about the symbol legends anymore. We can easily just place our symbol, remove something or add, and it will automatically update. So if I'm gonna add a fire blanket or location of blanket, I'll go here, place a symbol, search for blanket, and just place it, and you can see it automatically appears here as well. This makes it a lot easier when we work, and it's going to work quite well and fast. Another main thing we did was we actually evolved, so to speak, the occupancy load factor requirements. So now we have the opportunity to basically, of course, run the tool for calculating the total area in a compartment. We can calculate occupancy load or floor spacing factors, and we can start using that data. So if I select one of these spaces, we can also see once I selected these, we can see that it has a lot of still has a lot of parameters, but now we have grouped them differently to make it easier to find whatever we're searching for. For instance, the reaction to fire is now under the materials and finish grouping. We can go here in the UK, which of course we have the BS 8644-1 legislation. So here we have a lot of parameters, which is part of the legislation now on, which we grouped under analytical model. We also added something called a schedule list called type of accommodation. For now, we only have had the time to prepare this key schedule with the correct values in the UK and the Swedish one. And we're going to add, of course, in the other countries as well, coming up in the next release. What this does is basically we can define what type of accommodation it is, and that will change the floor spacing requirement. Meaning, we can see here there's a drop down, and we can choose here if we don't want to search, if we don't want to add the occupancy load factor manually, we can choose what kind of accommodation, and that will automatically assign the occupancy load factor or floor space factor. But we don't want you to go through each one of them. We understand it's going to take a lot of time. So what we can do is quite easily open a schedule, which is as well included in each one of these. So we can just go here on occupancy load, and we can see here all the different rooms that are included. And I can actually go here and not sort by that, unsort by room name. And we get all the different rooms here where I can quite easily now change the accommodation type of accommodation, which will give us the occupant load factor. So for instance, bedroom, in the entire model, I can go here and just search for bedroom, and we got bedroom. We can go to office, and I can search for office, meaning we can start having quite fast and easy adding these because we all know what it is. I'll even go here and say shop furniture, perfect, and we get the different values. If I go to my floor plan again and I go to Bimfire tools and I go to compartmentation and run the occupancy load, I will go through the entire model, and it will now automatically on each space define the total area. If we had an occupancy load factor, it will add the occupancy load in the entire compartmentation. In this case, I only use the bedroom, but in the shop, for instance, sorry, the office, we have the 6, and that means that we can have a total number of people here of 10, which we, of course, can read in our tag. So we have this different tags to read out this information on our floor plan, which we can use and communicate with other stakeholders. The next thing, what I want to show you guys is, of course, we can start using these different values and creating these different compartmentations and run through it. But what we can do as well is that we have added in most Revit templates, we are adding as we go another compartmentation line. Because we know when we go up and having irregular compartmentation, because our compartmentation lines are quite rectangular, because those are the most common walls. But when we're getting another shapes of our compartmentations, we have added a more complex form of symbols that we can use. What I'm going to do right now is just open a 3D view, and we gotta take a look here. And I'm gonna actually hide all the levels. We don't have to see those. Perfect. On the very top in each building where we got walls that connect to the roof, it takes a lot of time to manually use the asymmetric properties that we have on our compartmentation. They definitely work, but it can be time consuming. So what we've done is added another component which looks and acts, of course, the same as wall compartmentation, but this family will be an adaptive family, and we can actually draw this in 3D in any kind of form. So I will turn on our enable temporary properties settings, and we go get our purple border around the entire view. And we can go to visibility and graphics settings, and we can go down to roof, and I will turn off the roof. And we can actually see how these different wall compartments, we can see there is a slope on the very top of this wall, which we can see here. So what we can do right now is we can go into our project browser, families, fire protection, and we got here something called adaptive soffit compartment. Here I can just drag and drop the requirement that I want to use. I'm going to use the 60 minutes, drag and drop. And you can see here, it kind of looks like an end of the house that you can see in the preview or pre-selection of this. It's a 5-point based family where we can click on up to 5 points to get any kind of shape that we might want to need. All we need to do is we go up here, click, select place on work plane. We select pick work plane, and we will pick the work plane. And now we can select the surface of this wall because this is the one that we want to draw on. Or we can change to any other. We just select the wall we want to pick, I want to draw on. You select that one. And once it's selected, we can now easily, just in 3D, select 5 points. 1, 2, and I'm gonna pick the kind of the middle of the wall, but if it's different height, or it would be in this case 2 slopes on the wall, we can use that, of course, but this is 1, so I'm gonna just select the middle of it, and I'm gonna add the 2 last points here, and I'm gonna select you and the very bottom down here. This will automatically now have the shape of that wall. You can see it here. But it's not in the middle of the wall, of course, so we have to just go very simple, go to floor plan. You can see it here, and we can select it and move it into the wall, the center line. Zoom in a little bit, the center line, and we now have the same representation of that line within the wall, but it's gonna be a custom shape. Last but not least, we can then manually connect this to the underlying wall, so they are connected, so we can send that data with import mapping later on. So we have the fire grid, and we got the fire rating protection here, meaning we can start building up our model a lot faster and a lot easier than before using the asymmetric. The asymmetric is still there for you guys who want to use it, so we can actually update that as well. Use that, so you don't have to update that as well. Another thing that we added into the model is something that we prepared and it's been on the help page for a while, but we added even more information. And because we know that a lot of you guys are dependent on IFC exports. So when we are exporting IFC, we want to send not all data, but we want to send the data that we actually have committed into that project. Meaning, when you start the project, you will tell the other stakeholders that you will deliver the different values, and this makes it possible also to rename certain parameters while exporting. Because every parameter we are using with Bimfire tools has a prefix called fire requirements. I know that not all countries or all projects like that. They want to use their own. So we can change that while we're exporting the IFC. And what we're going to use is two things that I'm going to show you. It's going to be user-defined property sets that you can download from our help page. Just search for user-defined property sets and you will find it. And what I want to show you is that we actually now can go into manage for, project information, and we got two new parameters called building name and site name. Here you can write any kind of name, of course, about the project to make the IFC be look and feel a lot cleaner and better, because it's going to read in the IFC viewers which kind of site and of course building name it is. In my case, I've already prepared a file and a user-defined property sets, which are going to be here under export. And we got this Bimfire tools property sets where I defined that I want to send data to a tab called fire requirements, fire rating wall, and I've used here the BS 8644-1 naming convention with fire resistant requirement and min clear width requirements that we can use. I will close that up down a little bit, and we can easily now go to File, Export, IFC. I can go to Modify Setup. I can go to Property Set and untick everything up here and select Use Export User Defined Property Sets. And you can browse all the way to the Bimfire property sets, once again, that you can download from the help page. You say OK. Define where it should be exported. I'm going to overwrite the IFC that I already exported, and I will say export and replace. While this is exporting, I'm going to open Symetri, which I know a lot of you are using. Of course, it's the most common product there is, and I will give this a second. Maybe one or two more seconds. Shouldn't take this long. Oh, perfect. Perfect, it's exported, and I already have it here, so I can just double click. And it can be an architect model. And here we got then, of course, the IFC, we got our soffit wall up here, and we got the bottom one here as well. We can even, because this is a IFC, we can even turn on, and you can see here that we can actually see all the different spaces, and we can define the different compartmentation that we have defined here. If we now select one of these wall compartmentation, you can see there are not a lot of parameters here or tabs, but the fire requirement that I defined, and we got the fire resistant requirement down here, and we can see that it only exported that parameter that I agreed upon, meaning when the BIM coordinator is using clash control, we can tell them, look in this tab, and you can use the data, only this information when you do the clash detections. The same here would be in my arrows, which I have then fire requirements, and we have min clear width requirement, and you can get that information very visible in this IFC export. So you can control in a much better way what you have export. And of course, as I said, we can see here straight away that it's Bimfire site name and Bimfire building name, where otherwise this would say default, and there we got the level, so we can easily figure out what we have. I will turn this off. The last thing I'm going to show you is something that is the first step of bringing a little bit more control by calculating the amount of fire stoppers that you might need in a project, or giving the data to the contractor so they can calculate and get a correct quota, or at least a quota. So what you can see here is I got a floor plan, we got some compartmentation around the shafts, and if you go to Bimfire tools and compartments, we have something called clash detection. This will run a clash detection between any Revit MEP model and the compartmentation itself. And I run the tool, and you can see it actually go through the entire model, and it will place different symbols. So we got 3 different symbols, only 2 in this floor plan, sadly. You've got a yellow one and a turquoise one. Those means, the turquoise one means pipe, the yellow one means ducts, and a blue one, which means cable trays. I've already prepared here a view which I only show the penetration. So we can see here all the penetration that I have in these compartmentation, and it will only give us notification where we have a penetration, where we have a compartment. If I select the duct clash symbol, we can see down here that it actually automatically also connects to the duct itself with the fire grid that we are so familiar with. And we have always the fire rating duct with the requirement that is on the compartmentation. It also takes information about the duct itself. So we know the height, we know the width. If there is a type mark, as we use it both in Norway and Sweden for the tags, we will have that information here. We know which kind of name it is and then which level. If I select the pipe, of course, it's the same, but we have fire rating pipes, and we got diameter instead of height and width. What we can do with this information is, of course, we can send this information to the MEP engineers so they can have this data on their components, and they can understand which systems are have a requirement on or penetrate the compartmentation, because they know this system needs then an isolation or certain material to achieve those requirements. But very good. If something changed, we can run the tool again, and it will move those symbols to the new position. So we always can keep track on these components. But as I mentioned, we can easily now go to or create a schedule, which I called clash detection. And here we can have all the different duct penetration, in this case, pipe penetration. We have the area, the total perimeter of that area, and perimeter, of course, around those ducts. We know the different requirements, and we can take this report and export it as a report or a schedule, a CSV, which we can send to the contractor, because they are using Excel for this, and they can use this in their Excel sheet to just start calculating how many penetration there is. Because it's very common that they can do the calculation around structural walls. They're relatively easy to find using just the structural model, but this will also include every penetration in shaft wall, for instance, which they often miss. Right now, it only works with walls. In later releases, it will also work with floors. It's a plan, so we can have a complete penetration. But we start where we are right now, and it's going to be with walls, and we can keep track of those. So this was 6 things that I wanted just to run through with you, so you have seen it and what you can use your model till. Some of the updates, there is a lot more, of course. If you go to our help page as well, you can find the full release log that you can take your time and read through all the changes that's been made. And I want to say thank you for coming.